So welcome to this book launch, and both, of course, online and here in the flesh. I'm not quite sure whether you are able to see how many there are in the flesh. I don't think so, but Viv and I are presenting of course, we wrote the introduction. People are waving at you, Viv. And of course, we are the co-editors of the book that is launched today. And we'll start with setting the context and talk a little bit about the event that inspired us writing this book. And this is followed by our own chapter Night Sky, how Karen Barad's work is giving us new kind of electrifying insights in our own research and teaching and that of our students. Where is the presentation, George? Okay, so that's coming. So our presentation is coming on, and then I suppose we are going to go, aren't we? So the book, In Conversation with Karen Barad, engages from multiple entry points with a two-day research seminar in 2017 in Cape Town, as George is opening up our PowerPoint. The event was organized by the Decolonizing Early Childhood Discourses Project, and Karen Barad, as distinguished professor at University of Santa Cruz in California and a member of this project, was visiting the Western Cape and asked whether they could do anything for the project. And of course, we jumped to this opportunity. And Karen self-identifies as they, by the way, so we will be referring to they as we go along. So Karen traveled. So they came to Noordhoek and a place, conference center called Monkey Valley, and where they presented two papers from their then recent work on spatial and temporal diffractions. And emerging researchers, including Viv's and my own PhD students, also had an opportunity to present our own post-humanist research in progress. Now, the seminar started by inviting all participants, introducing themselves by picking one or two images from a range of laminated images, artwork, photos from magazines and cartoons, some with words on the back. It's sort of I've been collecting over the years and I've been using in my teaching. Karen Barad picks a card with an image of a boat on the sea. So this is in the introduction of the book, and explains it as follows. Because of the wind and because of what we don't normally see, because the wind is very much interacting with the waves, everybody knows that who has spent time out there surfing like this with a big sail that is also transparent as well as opaque. At the back of the card is the word hope, but also in much small letters in the left top corner, you might be able to see making connections. Later on, Karen comments how powerful this pedagogy was in us connecting up, as a starting point for an academic seminar. All our conversations were videotaped, and returning to these tapes has co-created our book, making new connections as we were returning. Of course, the concept of new, in inverted comma, is troubled in Agential Realism, as this assumes a break with the past. In the introduction to the book, there's a QR code with one of the influential papers Karen performed during the seminar. Viv and I were very familiar with Barad's spatial diffraction as methodology when the seminar started. And the first paper they performed is Diffracting Diffraction of 2014. Diffractive readings create new, in inverted comma, insight by merging ideas as waves do when they encounter an obstruction in the sea. Let's not talk about obstructions in the sea at the moment, or as they overlap, combine and interfere with each other in what is known as a superposition. So this is a quote from Barad's Meeting the Universe Halfway, page 79. What we had less appreciated was how diffraction also includes diffracting times and places through one another. As Barad explains, boundaries don't hold. Barad's diffractive methodology for teaching and research is itself an interference pattern. It was created by reading quantum field theory and feminist social justice through one another diffractively. This is ontologically very different from referring to the scholarship of others in the field in a typically academic way. This usually assumes that you're at an ontological distance from bodies of literature, having a bird's eye point of view, hovering over fields, creating an overview by comparing, contrasting, juxtaposing, or looking for similarities and themes. The second paper Karen performed during the seminar was called Troubling Times and followed not by a Q&A session, but to their surprise, by a community of philosophical inquiry session. As Karen stands outside the circle, they listen with great care to people's questions and responds to them. Some of these responses are included in the book. Guided by an art educator, Teresa Josa, also an author of the book, at the end of the seminar, there's plenty of opportunity to also let various materials respond to the emerging complexifying ideas presented.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Very nice to be here at this event, which we've been looking forward to for some time. So we're going to be focusing more specifically on the book which you see in front of you, which we've come to celebrate and hear more about from the authors. As you can see, the title is In Conversation with Karen Barad, Doings of Agential Realism. And we're reminded of how Karen Barad's Agential Realism is rapidly gaining traction across disciplines in higher education. Research inspired by Agential Realism can be challenging and difficult to access. And the idea of editing this book was that we wanted to provide accessible ways of engaging with Agential Realism through responses to informal conversations with Karen Barad that are diffractively woven through the chapters. What was important for us was that a large quantity of the text is written by postgraduate students, some of whom have now graduated, whose chapters offer examples of Agential Realism's use in various contexts and disciplinary backgrounds, which you'll hear about shortly. In this way, the book provides an opportunity for both emerging and more established scholars to show how such an event could have an ongoing rippling effect on their work and thinking. The book is also written to inspire alternative pedagogies and ways of organizing research seminars, more in line with its philosophy, a doing of posthumanism in the organization of events. More particularly, the book provides fresh insights into complex and contentious concepts such as temporal and spatial diffraction, the void, agential separation, entanglement and decolonization, and largely, but not solely, in a South African location. And as I said, it's written in accessible ways for readers to think with and to be affected by. We're now going to go on to our own chapter, which is called Chapter Night Sky, Temporal Diffraction, a Constellation of New Electrifying Insights in Conversation with Karen Barad. Our own chapter works with the notion of constellations to help us think otherwise about chronological time. Intricate patternings from insights from before, after, and during Karen Barad's presentation called Troubling Times at the Cape Town seminar flash up in constellations for us as authors in our deliberations of how querying chronological time might have the potential for doing responsible research and pedagogy. Karen Barad proposes that constellations are images of particular material configurations of stars. In the image of a constellation, what has been comes together in a flash with the now to form a constellation. And that's a quote from Barad, 2017. Stars in the dark sky are not the same distance from us, they observe. In the chapter, we examine how the paper on temporal diffraction, performed by Karen as part of the seminar, has inspired our further writing, often in collaboration with our postgraduate students. The constellation has particular relevance for our work in providing an array of familiar and strange patternings that emanate from the seminar and Barad's writings, and that we use to reorient and awaken ourselves to temporal diffraction. Temporal diffraction enables us to understand how the past, present, and future are inextricably entangled, and how the hauntologies of colonialism and apartheid seep into every aspect of South African life. My article with Tammy Sheffer in the Feminist Review on wild swimming methodologies for decolonial feminist justice to come scholarship thinks with oceans and swimming as one form of wild methodology and slow scholarship. It draws on hauntology to think about possibilities of such methodologies for troubling normative academic practices directed at different ways of being and becoming. Situated in the post-apartheid space of South African higher education, which continues to follow and reinstate colonial, patriarchal, and neoliberal capitalist logics, it questions the silences surrounding material histories of subjugation and violence embedded in higher education institutions and the lives of those who enter those spaces. Embodied effective practices such as sea swimming are powerful ways of thinking with the sea and its creatures in creative ways, opening up new imaginaries of scholarship towards a justice to come. Swimming, writing, thinking together, and sharing on social media images such as the one of the quadricolored nudibranch, as you can see here, form part of slow scholarship. The chapter, A Pedagogy of Hauntology, Decolonizing the Curriculum with GIS, with Michalina Zembilas and Siddiq Mutalo, who's here and who you'll hear from shortly, elaborates on how a pedagogy of hauntology might be enacted in a higher education curriculum, taking into account the ghosts of South Africa's apartheid and colonial past. This piece focuses on how GIS mapping and analysis reveal the absences, presences of the there, then, here, now, and the effects of the past, present on people's lives and the land. Situated in an engineering education in the South African University of Technology, the chapter shows how GIS can be used to animate hitherto occluded injustices of the past, using a micro instance of activism in the form of a storytelling intervention. By telling the story of apartheid violence in Cape Town's District 6 through a GIS lens, the affectivity and materiality of forced removals and violent dispossession becomes reified through pedagogical concepts such as a sensibility towards non-linear time, indeterminacy, and discontinuity to address the specters of the past, present. And finally, in a chapter in an edited collection on post-human literacies, edited by Candice Kubi and colleagues, Denise Newfield and I used Tebua to refer to a secondary school literacy project in a South African township school. The chapter refers to a Tebua hauntology, though brief and focused on one literacy classroom in a South African township school, as an abbreviated tale of colonial and educational histories of apartheid that live on 20 years after the advent of democracy. These hauntings, as present and future traces of the past, are part of existing and potential conditions and spaces, both political and pedagogic. They include Bantu education, the education for Black children in apartheid South Africa, as distinct from Christian national education for white children, and the current higher education campaign for decolonizing the curriculum in South Africa.
Okay, so in the chapter, I continue by, since the seminar, my conference presentations, books, and papers reveal a greater awareness of how temporal diffraction resists erasures between past and future. Temporal diffraction is particularly generative for childhood studies. Childhood is not something we, in inverted commas, leave behind. Various Baradian figurations have been inspirational for combating deficit models of education. For example, by diffracting the performative practices of the clairvoyant, self-stinging stingray, the midwife, and the pregnant human body through one another, or through a diffractive engagement with a heron, the snail, the void, constellations, and crystals. They're all figurations I used in various articles since the seminar. This playful use of homologies, importantly not metaphors, has been a refreshing and unusual opportunity in academia for reimagining the role of the educator, often in close collaboration with colleagues and students. This brings the philosophy of Agential Realism alive in and outside the university classroom. The seminar profoundly disrupted for me notions of inside and outside now and then in higher education. Teaching, for example, through field trips, here with Roseanne, by the way, to an abandoned zoo, an aquarium, and also with the abandoned zoo, Brandon was there too, an aquarium in a park with alien trees, or a beach haunted by violent deaths, among fellow students, thereby generating the notion of planetary literacies. Temporal diffraction makes a critical difference when analyzing classrooms, research sites, and photographs. For example, in one chapter of a book co-written with some of this book's authors, we explore the classroom as a void that is not empty. We wonder what we are missing, not feeling, hearing, or seeing with our human senses in this research site, a grade 2 classroom in Cape Town. The land, skin on which this school has been built is entangled with its apartheid history that is there and not there at the same time, disrupting binary logic and troubling a metaphysics of presence. What is it we are not noticing? Not even noticing we are not noticing.
Returning to the seminar, we now consider what parting insights flash up for us in the thick present in relation to temporal diffraction. One aspect which has troubled and intrigued us as scholars and educators has been the question of the new, as we said before. The hauntology of corona time in the thick now of the present has brought indeterminacy to the fore. Nothing could be predetermined. Temporal diffraction has helped our scholarship after the seminar by bringing the past and the futures into the present and vice versa. This potential for doing justice to reconfiguring the now has been incredibly generative and politically significant. The thick now of the present moment is what Benjamin calls now time, Jetzeit, which is a quote from Karen Barad. Constellations of insights keep flashing up from before, during, and after the seminar, electrifying the night sky. Complex and intricate patternings evident in the night sky provide the potential for our collaborative efforts to think otherwise about chronological time and why this matters for responsible research and pedagogy.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is that this is going to be followed by 10-minute presentations from the authors of the chapters in the book. And some of them will be podcasts, some of them were other presentations, and they are each of them about 10 minutes. And so they're going to be followed one after another. And the first person is Walter, and that is a podcast that Walter, it is a chapter called Night, what is it called again? Black Blood, that was co-authored between Walter Cohen, Roseanne Reynolds, and myself. And Walter has recorded this podcast that we're going to listen to now, but we're going to put, if it all works okay, we're going to put up a photo, and then actually it's taken from the chapter.
This is Walter Cohen. I am professor at the State University of Rio de Janeiro and one of the co-authors of one of the chapters of the book In Conversation with Karen Barad, Doings of Agential Realism, edited by Karin Morris and Vivian Bozalek. It's a pleasure and honor to be part of this book. Our chapter reads Chapter Black Blood Matters, Moving Human and Non-Human Bodies from Question and Answer to a Pedagogy of Questioning, with Roseanne Reynolds and Karin Morris. It was really a pleasure, first of all, to be part of this seminar, the seminar that was the basis of this book. It was not so easy. I traveled from Brazil to Cape Town, but we were stopped at the airport with my youngest daughter, Milena, because the documentation was not in English. The authorization from the mother to travel with me was only in Portuguese. So we postponed one day, and we arrived when the seminar was already begun. And I remember entering Karen Barad's presentation that was immediately before our pedagogy of the questioning session. So I was impressed by some of her concepts and some of the words she offered us, and also I was quite impressed by the structure of the session. The place is just marvelous. It's very inviting for a educational and philosophical conversation. But I thought that there was something about how the chairs and the tables, the space was organized in this lovely place, Monkey Valley, that was quite an obstacle for our conversation. So I thought we needed to intervene on this structure. We needed to offer some difference in terms of the way we interact between ourselves and with the otherness that was around us. And in this sense, we offered a different structure. The writing of the chapter was also very beautiful, a lovely experience. And while I am recording this message, I am going through the pages of the book, and now I am at our first page, which exactly begins at page 41 of the book, and it says right at the beginning, Day 2 of the research seminar. It's very interesting. When does a seminar begin? When does a seminar begin? when is the beginning of a seminar, of a research seminar? When is the beginning of a research? It seems that I arrived, as I said, to the research seminar already began. And here at the beginning of the chapter, it says day 2. So, can something begin at number 2? Should always the first number be number 1? When do we begin to research, to think, to write, to be together in the world? The experience of writing this book, or this chapter, as I said, was fascinating because of the number of times the text went through each of us three, Rosanne, Karen, and myself, because of the number of times we changed even the order, the structure, the terms, the ideas we wrote. And I'm not so sure about the final version of this chapter, about its content, about the ideas, about the figures, about the words, about the questions. Because it seems to me that there is something incredibly alive in the process of writing this chapter. I cannot remember now when we began. I cannot say that it is already finished. Is it that things don't begin and don't end? Is this idea of beginning and ending something we might reconsider? Do these ideas of beginning and ending belong to a chronological understanding of the world and to a linear perception we might probably enjoy putting into question? Is it beginning and ending ideas we need to reflect, to move, to question, to experience under a beyond chronos order? I hope this invitation to read our chapter is also an invitation to think our experience of writing, our experience of researching, our experience of living, pedagogy and philosophy, and also about experience of time. I wish you a loving reading, a questioning reading of this loving and pedagogical writing.
Okay, sorry that the sound for that wasn't great on the Zoom side, but we will. I think the next ones will be fine, and Rosanne's gonna present in the flesh now.
I added. No.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I just need to share. Do you want to see?
Yeah.
Sure. Just give us 1 second as we transition from one person to the next. Thank you. I can't actually get rid of this. Okay. Meeting Karen Barad at Monkey Valley in 2017 was a highlight for me as a doctoral candidate, emerging researcher, and early years academic. Their work, theories, and practices became central to my PhD research, and I remain deeply affected by the work we did with them over the 2-day seminar in 2017, and each subsequent return to an article, YouTube presentation, online seminar, or chapter in a book. At the seminar, Karen presented 2 articles by reading them aloud to us with an accompanying PowerPoint. They enacted a returning to their own work, a responsibility to that which they loved. And this is from their interview with Julska et al. In 2021. I remain struck by this affirming, scholarly, and sacred practice, and have continued to read, reread, and return to Barad's work and that which I love. That which I love includes the philosophy of child and childhood studies, philosophy with children, and initial teacher education. Barad's work influences every part of my life as a lecturer and academic at the University of Cape Town, as a parent, a scholar, and a seeker of new ways of living more justly. The title of the chapter that I invite you to read, Chapter Read, Remembering as a Sacred Practice, came to me from Karen Barad's article, Troubling Times, Ecologies of Nothingness, Returning, Remembering, and Facing the Incalculable. A deeply significant article, which we were generously offered an opportunity to read in its pre-published form by Karen Barad. I've made many returns to the article and have been especially affected by the way their paper enacts a diffracted reading of Kyoko Hayashi's novella, From Trinity to Trinity, translated from Japanese into English by Ayoko Otake. This diffracted reading is returned to by Barad at the seminar in 2017, and I quote, Hayashi's narrator bodily traces these entanglements of colonialist histories, violent erasures, and avoidances as an integral part of a sacred practice of remembering, which is not a going back to what was, but rather a material reconfiguring of space-time mattering in ways that attempt to do justice to account for the devastation wrought and to produce openings, new possible histories, reconfigurings of space-time mattering through which time beings might find a way to endure, end quote. I use remembering as a sacred practice and go further to remembering childhood as a sacred practice. Karen Barad has made it possible for me to theorize about child and childhood and war in this chapter, enabling a troubling of apartheid time, which is not past and gone. The violence of the atomic bomb created by physics and science, which is a discipline Karen Barad emerges from, and her responsibility to concerns of justice, also Barad in their interview with Julska, states justice which is never finally achieved moves me. My name is Rose Ann Reynolds, and I remain in conversation with Karen Barad, for there is much more to be done, for the bombs have never stopped splitting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rosanne. Next, we'll be sharing a video from Teresa. Hopefully it's going to play perfectly, no problem.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I can't join you in person. I'm in Johannesburg. So I wanted to just record something. My name's Teresa Gioza, and I wrote chapter 5 called A Marking Time, Marking Bodies, Relations Matter. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the effect that Karen Barad's visit had and continues to have on the way that I relate to academic research and writing. So finding the non-representational in the tools and in the undoing of representation is an irresistibly tricky but enchanting quest for me, feeling as I do like a bit of a lost or lapsed artist in a maze of trans, intra, post disciplinarity, and all its possibilities for education and education as responsibility. So that's what I wanted to do, but actually what I have to share with you is more like a ramble around the disjointedness of time and the impossibility, you can hear the slash, can't you? The impossibility of ethico-onto-epistemological becoming. And there'll be a verbal footnote or two, perhaps. When was that workshop anyway? You know, how many years younger was I? 1, 2, 3, 4 years? Lockdowns and living online seems to have done something to time. But it also feels so close, like it's still going on, that workshop of 2017. And we're back there in a way today, among our company of inquiring souls, listening in our different ways to the poet, philosopher, physicist who came over to meet us and to share were meeting us and the universe halfway. And now some of us are halfway through reading the universe, halfway again on a Monday morning at 7 a.m. So there could be a footnote here with a link to the reading group. Always already feeling that we could never be enough. The power of the weight of the horror always present, and our carrying on as usual, never being enough. Karen's questions unanswered, hanging in the air, and making more questions. Boom, a shattering moment in 1945 that changed everything. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the tale retold of the Hibakusha returning to the site of the creation of that bomb and the testing ground. The radioactivity at work still in the DNA of her grown child. So how is a law like a bomb? How to notice the impact of a moment, a waking moment in 1913, Sol Plaatje's waking moment when everything was tainted with the taste of the horror. Slavery by all or any other names, tangibly coded in words on a page. Sorry. Racist bombshell, shrapnel, hellhole, apartheid persists in all or most of the chapters in this book. And apartness widens in Gini proportions. Footnote, Gini coefficient, named after the statistician who came up with the idea of measuring inequality. So it becomes fall apartheid. What to do with 350 Rand a month as an emergency grant? It's a joke with a straight face, no laughing matter, with life and death consequences. So when is the next scheduled load shedding anyway? And for whom is it going to matter the most? So ending with a quotation from Barad's 2010 Quantum Entanglements and Ontological Relations of Inheritance. Science and justice, matter and meaning are not separate elements that intersect now and again. They are inextricably fused together, and no event, no matter how energetic, can tear them asunder. They cannot be dissociated, not by chemical processing or centrifuge or nuclear blast. So that's all I've got to share with you. And yeah, enjoy the launch and being together there today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And I can see she's actually here with us. So Joanne messaged on the group, double Teresa, like her face in a video. So thank you very much. Was that a monkey in the background?
Hello, we are being load shedded at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, it was my dog coming to the window in the
background. A dog. I think there was some chirping in the background of the bird, so yeah. I thought it was an animal. Okay, great. So the next video we have is from Sadiq and Veronica, who are actually here, but they've recorded a really lovely video with some fancy editing as well. So let's give that one a try. We have Joanne first. Oh, we have Joanne. Oh, apologies. So then Joanne is also on this call, but she also has a video. So yeah, sorry, it's first Joanne with chapter Teal. Try. Go. Wonderful. Thanks, Joanne.
The chapter is Teal. Teal is a contamination of multiple colors, an unbounded becoming of writing. It refuses to settle for the boundaries of academic writing frameworks, but instead lives within the frameworks and changes them. It is porous.
That's so strange.
Stop shooting.
No, it's correct.
It's right.
It's supposed to be. Okay. It's supposed to be Teresa's voice.
Okay.
Maybe just.
I thought maybe with everyone. Okay.
Sorry, just to say that there will be some other voices that will. There'll be some other voices that will come through as well. Those in the Zoom and those in the room. We don't have to press pause when that happens.
Everyone in the room is.
Say something about that, Joanne.
Yeah.
The reason for doing that this way or not?
Should I preempt it, or do you want to wait? Yeah, I'm happy to say something. So I had the privilege a few weeks ago of having my chapter read in the post-qual reading group, and the recording was made there, and it was then posted on the website on YouTube. And when I was asked to do a podcast, I was quite excited about the fact that it could be to that reading group, which we had. So what you notice now is how the chapter itself has traveled through Monkey Valley and through reading groups and here at the book launch today. So it is not a glitch in the system, and it's not load shedding when you hear voices that aren't mine, but you will hear my voice and other voices. And I think that that's part of the shimmer for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
The chapter is Teal. Teal is a contamination of multiple colors, an unbounded becoming of writing. It refuses to settle for the boundaries of academic writing frameworks, but instead lives within the frameworks and changes them. It is porous like the gathering of kelp, water, salt, and watery bodies.
logically, we were talking about the footnotes in Joanne, and they work slightly differently here, but certainly, Ezra was saying the reading them together makes really changes. Now you realize we may need always to be reading with more than one person, even when we're alone.
Point of view, I just wanted to ask a question around footnotes and word counts and how that works. Do you get to hide your number of words in your footnotes, or do they count?
Busted, Joanne, busted.
I count them because they do count, and so they're not hidden, or and so I'm working within that tension of they matter as much as the body of text matters. So they are part of the number count and the word count. And so when I'm choosing to expand on a footnote, I'm doing that with the tension of knowing that it's not, it's what is a part of, and so it is included here in word count.
To the seminar with Karen Barad at Monkey Valley, which has had a specific influence on my journey in disrupting the assumed separateness of relations. I'm discovering more ways to question and reconfigure research practice as entangled relations through returning to the seminar, the reading groups where we continue to read their work, and the Decolonizing Early Childhood Discourses research groups engagements with other water researchers, practitioners, professors, kin.
By kin, I mean those who have an enduring, mutual, obligatory, non-optional, you can't just cast that away when it gets inconvenient, relatedness that carries consequences. I have a cousin, the cousin has me. I have a dog has me. I have a garden, and the garden has me. The seeding of seeds, the flourishing of leaves, the salty ocean breeze, composting earthworms.
Writers and academics. Returning.
Brad explains returning as a multiplicity of processes.
Becomes a generative method of troubling these boundary
helping
lines
to make compost or
of
otherwise
research
being
and
busy at work and
reimagining
at play.
these lines as
An imagery of the
entangled,
soil
permeable,
being turned over and over, with it being ingested and excreted. This is a lively affair of an earthworm tunneling through it, burrowing all means of aerating the soil, allowing oxygen in, opening it up and breathing new life into it.
I remember sensing and getting frustrated by the limitations of writing, explaining, and engaging with concepts to express my curiosity.
My curiosity has always been intertwined with research. My heart makes my head swim, found on 1952, as cited in McKittrick 2021. The tension and force to express in words and written language are examples of how meaning is validated only with academic language. Water along the Blay, marshy body of water where I live does not submit to human-made borders. It flows through them or over them and makes different ones. The water leaks through and over the tidal pool walls, which makes me think about how borders aren't fixed in time and space. Erasure is a material practice that leaves its trace in the very worlding of the world.
To have this additional skin. This lanyard skin doesn't work in the same way for using my access at the library. The steps towards the library feel too far from the education building, and the ground is less familiar. The embodiment of haunted time stirs my body.
Figure T2 between the shelves under erasure, 9th of April 2018. Going to the university library with my supervisor, we were nearing the end of my master's thesis, and there were books that she was telling me about that lived on the shelves of the university library. It didn't take long before I revealed that I haven't actually been able to go there by myself. This memory returns as one that speaks about the structures of academic worlds that draw in other relations, even though it does not necessarily register them. My father was able to study here for 3 months until there were complaints about his race classification. I walk on the ground where he and so many were illegal bodies.
The fixed lines reinforce bounded lines of individual bodies in research. They place the researcher, research participants, environment, and research methods as separate.
Call the exit, please. What a privilege for multiple reasons, and an indeterminate list from my side, as just being able to sit and listen to this work being read out loud. So I leave you with the last 2 sentences at the end of my chapter Teal, page 103. To do this, researchers are called upon to be a part of creating leaks in the borders of institutional time and personal time, which includes ice cream and writing and footnotes and word count. We have to work diffractively with time and pay closer attention to what is often excluded. The concrete smells different. It's leaking. It sure does smell different for me today. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, all the very best. We hope to see you all on the 25th at the book launch. We hope to continue the work that this book chooses to create and affect change in our lives, the work of the children, the people, the animals that we are with. So thanks everyone for being here, for your graciousness in terms of just being part of the Stop and Share and Share and Stop. And Joanne, it was lovely to have you here, and we look forward to reading more about all your work. Anya, all the best. Keep going, everyone. That's
Keep going. Yeah, time is leaking. Just keep going.
Cool. Thank you so much, Joanne. I think that style of video was very true to the nature of the piece. And definitely when we did the reading during the returnings, having people read the footnotes, a different voice with the footnotes thing was like quite incredible. Cool. So next we have Adrian. I think she's going to be presenting. Oh, hi, Adrian.
Hello. Hi. I also have load shedding, but I will be presenting live. Thanks to UPS. George, will it allow me to screen share?
I will make you a host. And then,
Thank you so much. My apologies for my voice. Can I start? Is it all working?
So okay. We'll show everyone in the room afterwards.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So my chapter is called Ultramarine, on aftermaths, afterlives, and after images. And in this chapter, I try to think with, in conversation with the way in which temporalities and ethico-political matters are intricately woven throughout Karen Barad's work. Their texts stay with me, move with me, a murmur, an echo, refolding and retreating, overlapping and doubling up like ocean waves. How can I be responsible for that which I love? Carrying weathered handwritten notes of Barad's text and thick knotted matterings with me, like a pebble in my palm, a stone in my shoe. From the cold Atlantic Ocean, salt-laden winds and the arid landscapes along its shores, to the sweltering tropical humidity, cyclone swells and tepid waters of the Indian Ocean, from Occident to Orient. There are no solutions, Barad suggests. There is only the ongoing practice of being open and alive to each meeting, each interaction, so that we might use our ability to respond, our responsibility, to help awaken, to breathe life into ever new possibilities for living justly. For years, I've been following multi-species death assemblages, the remains of beings brought together post-mortem, after death, from rack zones and oceanic graveyards, former sites of the slaughtering and processing of marine animals, breakwaters and fencing platforms, hazardous waste landfills. I sit with them, am touched by them, carry their smells with me. I taste the salty residue on my skin. I circle their still moving bodies. In this chapter, I stray and circle back, touching on aspects of saltwater bodies from an Atlas of Loss, which was a practice as research PhD project at the University of Stellenbosch from 2015 to 2019. And then also my new ongoing work, Waterlog. Waterlog is a body of site-responsive creative practice and archival inquiry in which I trace and tangle Terra Aqua's multi-species histories in the enduring aftermaths of imperialism, extractivism, capitalism, and military-industrial expansion, from the mainland shores and islands along the southern African coast to the South Atlantic, Indian and Southern Oceans, the subantarctic islands, and finally to the frozen ends of the earth, Antarctica. In this chapter, I try to think of what does it mean to be after, and what does this mean in terms of doing research? As paraphrasing Barad's turning it over and over again for returning, what would it mean to be searching and searching again? The after of linear telechronological conceptions of temporality and causality belong to what Walter Benjamin calls homogeneous empty time, clock time, chronos time, time conceived as, in Barad's words, attuned to a succession of discrete moments. This, Barad writes, is the time of modernity, capitalism, colonialism, imperialism, industrialism, militarism. It is the regimen. Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but are we supposed to see your images?
Yes. Are they not showing?
No, they're not. They're not moving.
Oh my goodness, this is, oh no. I had like a whole happen. Are you not seeing
your images? Yeah. Your images are so amazing. That's why I thought maybe if you can put it on presenter view. So if you can go back to the beginning and just go.
View, though. That is so weird. So are you not seeing all the? Because I'm seeing them on my side.
What, Adrian? We've got presenter view on the screen, and you've got the slides on your side. So we're seeing your presenter view. So it's not taking you through the slides on our side here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Thank you for alerting me. You should have stopped me in my first sentence already.
No, we're still listening to your amazing words.
Oh, sorry. Right. What I can do is, okay, so let me stop the screen share. I'm so sorry about this. Okay, stop the screen share and I can start again. So if this is so strange that it's not showing that side. So I'm seeing the full screen on this side. Are you not seeing the full screen images on this side, on your side? No. Okay. I'm so sorry about this.
We couldn't see them in the full screen. We could still see them on the side. But once we told you and you started moving, then they did move. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but they were moving on my
working,
side.
But from the beginning it wasn't. Yeah. We could only see the first.
That is so weird because they were moving on my side. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay.
Should I just
I think we were also influenced by the yeah, if you could share it again and then maybe just go back a sentence and it'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
We could see some of them, but it wasn't like big and beautiful. I like it.
I'm so sorry about this. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let us try the screen share again. And what I can do, Karen, just to make up for this, is I can just make a screen recording at home, just where I read over the images, and I'll just send it to you to use. Then we don't
I'm also quite good at editing, so I think I think
no, that's fine. That's fine. Don't worry, George. Yeah, what I'll just do is I'll just read the text with the images recording and send you the screen recording, and then we don't have to worry about this whole discussion in the middle about my images not showing. I'm so sorry, everyone. Okay, let us try the screen share again.
Sure. Thank you.
No worries. I should have maybe rather recorded this. I thought I was doing the right thing by being live. Okay, let us try this again.
We enjoy seeing you live, don't
Right, so can you now see the images? Big. That is so weird. Okay, sorry, it's supposed to be on presenter view, so you're not supposed to be seeing the side images, but it's fine, don't worry. At least you can see something. Right, I'm going to just backtrack a little bit. My text is very short, it's only 5 minutes anyway, so I'll just backtrack a bit. Right, so reversing a bit. For years, I've been following multi-species death assemblages, the remains of beings brought together post-mortem after death, of rack zones and oceanic graveyards, former sites of processing and the slaughter of marine animal bodies. From hazardous waste landfill sites and museums, I sit with them, am touched by them. I carry their smells with me. I circle their still moving bodies. Sorry, this is a little bit out of joint now. In this chapter, I stray and circle back, touching on aspects of saltwater bodies from an Atlas of Loss, which was a practice as research PhD project at the University of Stellenbosch from 2015 to 2019. And my new ongoing work, Waterlog, a body of site-responsive creative praxis and archival inquiry, in which I trace entangled terra aquis multi-species histories in the enduring aftermaths of imperialism, extractivism, capitalism, and military industrial expansion. From the mainland shores and islands along the southern African coast to the South Atlantic, Indian and Southern Oceans, the subantarctic islands, and finally to the frozen ends of the earth, Antarctica. In the chapter, I tried to think with Barad's work in terms of what it may mean to be after, and what this means in terms of research, of searching, and again, of researching as in searching it over and over again, to paraphrase Barad's turning it over and over again. The after of linear telechronological conceptions of temporality and causality belongs to what Walter Benjamin calls homogeneous empty time, clock time, chronos time, time conceived as attuned to a succession of discrete moments, Barad writes. This is the time of modernity, capitalism, colonialism, imperialism, industrialism, militarism, the regimented orderly progression of train lines, assembly lines, communication lines, timelines, and of the industrial scale slaughter and rendering down of animal bodies into myriad unrecognizable parts. Sorry, this presentation is out of sync now with having to reverse midway. But after is also the after of aftershocks and infinitesimal minor tremors, the after of the many unspectacular forms of letting die, of echoes, of murmurations, of reverberations, of quivers, and of after effects. Of matters and of decay and time, and the reclaiming of damaged or deserted spaces, voids in human-centric terms, by unexpected life forms. In this chapter, I also think with the idea of the after image of a spectral haunting retained on the retina, which is neither fully present nor absent, shifting, dissolving as it moves between remembering and forgetting. These are the visions that haunt us, follow us, and to which we return. It is the after of the aftertaste and aftertouch of after images, aftermaths and afterlives. This is a word of untimely returns, of restless remains, ashes to ashes, layers of dust to dust, salt water to salt water. It is the after of at once, following and being alongside, of coming after, of survivability and afterlives, of living on after deaths and living with dying, of working in the wake of running late and running out of time, of slow work in times of urgency and emergency, of losing time, of ghostly assemblages and untimely returns, of deadly entanglements and restless remains. My hope is that this chapter 2 signals an unsettled conversation in progress with the inseparability of time and justice in Barad's work, of an attempt to grapple with complicity and heightened precarity, with the unfinished labors of post-mortem mourning and witnessing, and a yearning towards more wakeful and just planetary futures. Work that asks that we do not only return, but also tarry. Thanks so much. Sorry about all the out of syncness and having to redo the images. I'll send you a new presentation, George.
These images are so beautiful.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had no idea that you couldn't see them in the beginning. I'm so sorry about that.
I think it's fine. We got to see everything. Wow.
I had arranged them so nicely to be in sync with what I was reading, and then when they're reversing, they went all out of sync. But I'll make a recording and just send it to you and to Karen.
Thank you.
Oh, I need to stop the screen share. Sorry. Let me just stop it. There we go.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just for a sec, I'm just going to show everyone in the room, in the Zoom room, what's happening in the real room. Okay. That was what we said, because I feel like, hybrid is a little bit weird. I'm just going to do a little.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, because we're only seeing the presenters each time.
There we go. Everyone's in the room. Okay, cool. So Veronica and Sadiq are now and they are in the room with us, but have made a beautiful video as well, so we're going to play that one. Okay. Here we go.
Hi, Veronica.
Hello, Sadiq.
So here we are at the book launch. I wonder if Karen Barad will watch this. Hi, Karen. That meeting with Karen at Monkey Valley was quite important for both of us. By that point, we had both read Meeting the Universe Halfway, and Karen's new paper, Troubling Times and Ecologies of Nothingness, was about to be presented to us. I think for both of us, that paper would be so important. And we actually read that paper through our own practice in this chapter. So let me start off by asking you, how did geomatics and obstetrics get connected and entangled to make up this chapter?
Thank you, Sadiq. Thanks for introducing our chapter and the special moment. I'd like to quote from Barad's page 296 at Meeting the Universe Halfway. A delicate tissue of ethicality runs through the marrow of being. There is no getting away from ethics. Mattering is an integral part of the ontology of the world in its dynamic presencing. And to be honest, grappling with issues of ethics in our past working life in many ways brought Sadiq and myself together. We had the same supervisor. We were looking at our work in the academia in ways that would foreground ethics. And Karen Barad's relational ontology brought us together. We would talk, we would discuss together while we waited for our reading group, while we were in our reading group, and also we tended to drive home together. and discuss further. So thank you, Sadiq. It was a very enriching time that really led to this chapter in this book and our PhDs, which were finalized soon after meeting Barad at Monkey Valley. So I'd like to ask you a question, Sadiq. Was there anything that Barad said to you that really was useful for your PhD during that time at Monkey Valley, where it was cold and raining, but it was a really inspiring time?
Yeah, it was. Thanks. So I think that the point that stuck with me the most was what Barad said about gestures to the future. And so when we presented to Karen, you remember that I told the story of Van Riebeck's hedge. Van Riebeck, who was the Dutch commander at the original colonization of the Cape, ordered his land surveyor to mark out the farms of the first free burghers, as they were called, and it was right here in Cape Town. To keep the local indigenous Khoi people away, he started building and planting this boundary hedge. And what I did was I put the current map of the demographics of Cape Town in relation to the boundary hedge. And I showed that Black people still largely live outside the location of the original Dutch settlement. And Barad said that the Dutch were gesturing to a specific future. And that future is still happening, of course. Cape Town still being one of the most unequal societies in the world. And the spatial legacies of colonialism is still very much here. So the idea of gesturing to the future stayed with me. The Dutch, of course, gestured to a specific future, a future of perhaps exclusion and dominance, just as we as educators are gesturing to a specific future. So I tell my engineering students that they must think about the future that they are gesturing to. Previous engineers had a specific vision of the future governed by their own principles, by their own ethics, whether it be like making maximum profit or perhaps providing services to a large number of people, or maybe a few people, or not worrying about the environment perhaps, etc. So in a society in which people live with ancestors, I like to think of us as future ancestors. And I tell my students, when you are an ancestor, what will you be saying by the things that you did? And also, another thing that stuck with me is that Barad allowed me to get more confident in my creativity and encouraged experimentation. Let me ask you, Veronica, what did Barad's relational ontology, as your theoretical approach, what did it bring to your own research project?
Yes, thank you, Sadiq. Agential realism, relational ontology really helped me take risks and experiment in unpacking aspects of students learning in obstetrics in their 4th year when they are initiated into obstetrics and they witness violences unexpectedly, and really trying to unpack what is going on in the labor ward, what aspects of incapacitating students to respond to the violences, and really looking at how matter matters and encouraging students to share their reflections rather than keeping them private, to say we need to look beyond the individuals, beyond individual competence, but look at relationality. What is emerging in the students' learning? And boundaries became important as well. The boundary of graduation is so fixed in our academia. And like you, I was encouraging students to say, where are you going? What about your practice beyond graduation? How are you going to bring compassion and care back into an environment that has normalized violence? So Sadiq, just going back to what made an impact on you, in your chapter, you chose a digital story of one of your students from the Eastern Cape. And I wondered whether you can tell us more about it, why you chose it and why that one in particular.
Yeah, that's a story that followed me for many years, and it's still following me. To go back a bit, before that story was made, It was in my GIS class at CPUT, and we were talking about xenophobia and the Great Bantu Migration. Somehow those two themes emerged. And like how Barad encouraged us to be creative, I asked my students to do the same. So I asked them to produce digital stories using maps. And this particular story engaged with Gestures to the Future. It was produced by a certain Mr. Zanukolo Palmer, Zanu, I call him, who later went on to become a performance poet, in addition to a geomatics practitioner. And during those conversations in class, Zanu was already thinking a lot about his history, about his ancestry. So he already knew a lot about where he came from. Through his digital story, he traced his ancestry all the way back to the Great Lakes of Africa and the movement through Central Africa, through Southern Africa, and onto the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And besides being this really rich, visually informative story because of the maps and all the spatial analysis that he did, it was also, in my view, it was a wonderful artwork in itself because he combined Xhosa narrative with history, poetry, etc. And in mapping his history, he was given an opportunity to link geomatics, GIS, mapping, engineering education to an African ancestral journey, which is still continuing, of course, because he is moving and his children will move and so on. This particular arrangement of knowledge practices, a light was shone onto an area of silence. And I think for a moment, Black history and African stories were valued through the lens of geomatics. And difference in this case was seen as positive. And to this day, when I play the story, Black pride emerges when the video is shown. So it was really a no-brainer for me to choose this particular story.
Thank you, Sadiq. I really see that both our projects have been producing and generating conversations and dialogue from hidden, silenced areas, from current students and their past, and hopefully productive and offering more new potential for the future. So thanks so much. I think it's exciting that both our projects are open, not closed, and there's more to come.
Thank you. Bye.
There you go. I think that was also really nice having the question and answer. Thank you, Sadiq and Veronica. And I'm so glad that you could join us here in the flesh today as well. So Nikki's going to present now. With help. With help, indeed. Yeah. So I think, I just probably just easiest if you share from your own screen and have a look at what that looks like there. So it can fit into here.
Bear with me today, please. I feel like I'm unraveling with all of this technology.
So I'm going to do that, and then so we can have lots. Yeah, and then that, and then the third one.
By the time we get to the end of the book launch, we would have mastered the art of sharing in multiple venues.
Actually, Adrian, we think that every time we do a presentation, and it always humbles us.
So are they saying that?
Yes.
Yay! Hello, everybody. I must say it's actually really because there's so much. There's so many resonances with what everyone has said. So hello, everybody. This one, I must press this one, huh? Yeah. Okay. So in preparing for the presentation today,
Apologies. Sorry, Nikki, can you hear me? My mouse got clicked and I muted the PQRC. Sorry, I'm blaming my dogs. So you need to unmute yourself. Thank you. Sorry. I didn't stand up. I clicked on the mouse pad. Apologies.
So on the screen, okay, so we get into the fabric or the bones of my chapter. So I press here, this one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So on the screen, you see a video, a kind of slow video that I made yesterday. It's a recording of my threading piece that I referred to in the text. And not only has it helped me to re-enter the past, present, future, the fray, it's also prized open possibilities for future nodes of inquiry. And it's activated another return to the chapter and the ongoing conversations with Barad and their teachings that underpin so much of my inquiry, of all of our inquiries. So the chapter was written at the time when I finished my PhD project, the beginning of which coincided with Barad's visit to Monkey Valley in 2017. And that workshop had a profound impact on my journey and the ongoing reverberations of which I feel and how they continue to contour my practice. So when Verb and Karen asked us if we'd like to submit abstracts for this book, I was super excited because it offered another way into my interests and exploring non-traditional modes of expression that were separate from and of course linked to my PhD project. However, when it came to writing, as always, I felt very stuck. I tried to write, but the thoughts and the words were so knotted together that they were dense and impenetrable. And writing alone could not unravel what needed to be expressed. I had to find another way in and out of this conundrum, because it is a continuing dilemma for me, but in this case, it prompted me to embark on a month of making with Barad, the daily practice of threading and stitching through and with a leftover scrap of muslin mull that I'd used for an artwork previously in 2010 that was entitled, it is entitled The Veil of Sciences. And I've lost my place. Yeah. So the chapter documents this artistic research process, as well as the multiple threads of concern that surface through the practice. And in this case, the open-ended process of thinking that materialized with needles, cotton, and thread, in a way became a vehicle, a portal, a space, a time, a mattering through which I could explore how the material conditions of threading became and are integral to theorizing. The critical tool that manifested through this iterative process is what came to be, for me, threading with the forward slash through the TH in the reading. And it makes sense to me because it embodies the diffractive process of stitching with and through Barad's readings and teachings in ways that, I quote, get underneath thought and open towards or open up towards thinking differently about thought. And that comes from Barad and Gandolfer, page 17. I mustn't touch my iPad. Okay. In other words, threading confirmed how sense-making is an iterative and collaborative practice that comes about through more than human, material, discursive, and interactive entanglements. So through the month of thinking and making with Barad, I mulled over certain concepts. And I came to understand that threading materialized diffractive readings as the ideas were threaded through one another. Threading also enacted agential cuts that, unlike absolute separations that enact a breaking or a separation apart, agential cuts rather are generated through material discursive encounters that cut together apart as one move. And each stitch enacted an agential cut that simultaneously gathered some areas of the mesh with the mull together whilst pulling other strands further apart. Each time, each stitch, pulling into focus specific matters of concern. We read that Agential Realism foregrounds the inseparability of knowing, becoming, and ethics. It also offers, I quote, an ongoing reopening, again, Barad and Gandolfer. So at times the cotton bound the muslin together, pulling the warp and weft together apart. And in prizing open these threads, I was able to explore important questions. For example, I could ask or explore how might threading unravel conventional nodes of what thought is? How might threading together with needles and fabric open up the conditions of theorizing ways that help me to understand who or what is doing the thinking and with what and whom is thinking happening. As the needle and thread passed through the open weave of the mull, the tension pulled the perpendicular warp and weft grid out of alignment, and where once were right angles, there were now irregular curves and wave-like lines that created curious winding topologies and markers and activators of new reverberations of thought. Through the month, threading led me to think with hauntings as they seem to materialize through the practice. For example, I was mindful of centuries of craft work associated with the feminine that's often undervalued in the big world of science. The pulling, the kind of new wave-like forms reminded me of a slide, backdrop slide that Barad displayed in a webinar that I attended in 2021. And when questioned, they explained that the image for them was very evocative of wave functions and quantum mechanics, and of bringing more of what quantum field theory is doing rather than quantum mechanics. Drawn to the more of what images can bring and how they speak to and through one another reminded me of two other images. Which might or might not appear. Let's see what happens. Let's see. Anyway. The two images which you can see in the book, the one is of Viv Bazelek, which I took when we were at an exhibition called Coded Nature in Amsterdam. And it's an artwork. Viv is peering at me through an artwork. Something's going to happen now. Pretty. There, into Viv. The ghost of Viv. So this artwork is called it's part of a series called the Ghost series, and this was the Queen's Chair. And something about what was happening around Viv's head and these lines reminded me of the Barad image. And then I also thought, if this is going to work for me now, I don't know, I'm going to take its time. The Queen, the notion of the Queen's, well, firstly, just talking about the artworks themselves, they manifest the marks and traces that humans leave on the bodies of the chairs and reference unequal power relations and how these power relations mark the bodies of humans differently. So there's a Queen's chair, King's chair, a chair, and a stool. So it was actually just fortuitous that Viv happened to be in front of or behind the Queen's chair, because it also helped me think, especially as a teacher of art history and fashion history in particular, about the notorious dress of Marie Antoinette, which was her robe, a robe that was also made out of muslin, the very fabric that the mull is made out of. And the dress at the time, being the kind of influencer extraordinaire that she is, the dress had huge effects on the economy of France, the economy of England, the kind of booming, or what was waning, but there became a booming cotton industry again in the plantations in the southern states of America, which of course had ramifications on the slave trade. And in England, what it did was that it enhanced finances for basically the financing of further colonialism and imperialism. So she was, her dress was a lot more than just a fashion statement or fashion item. It became an event. Anyway, what this allowed me to do was then, of course, look at the kind of zigzagging between the past, present, and future, allowed me to mull over the ethical ramifications of threading as a diffractive practice for teaching an anti-colonial fashion theory course, especially in District 6, as Sadiq has talked about, at a University of Technology, where the fashion industry is so in such proximity with the collapsed fashion industry and the very homes where a lot of the fashion or garment and industry garment workers lived. So it's helped me think about my practice in terms of my own implicatedness. It also helps me think about the students' responsibility as becoming fashion designers in terms of what they put out in the world. I'm aware that I'm going a little bit long, so I think I'm going to stop here. Just to say that the enacting of threading as a diffractive stitching together of parts has given me a language to think about thinking differently. And it's also materialized as a practice through which I begin to honor our inheritances and understand that we are of the world rather than in the world. In uncovering iterative matters of concern, agential cuttings together apart confirm for me that there's no totality, no determination or cut that is once and for all. Thank you.
Okay, so how does this work now? We need to go back to our presentation. Yeah. So thank you all for your presentations. We're going to finish. Does it ever end? Just to say that we won't be long, maybe at the most 5 minutes. And I can already smell the food. Yes, there we are. Fabulous. And I don't know, I think I wasn't standing in front of the camera. I have no idea how, because we can't see ourselves.
So we can just confirm that it's on speaker.
Okay.
For everyone in the room as well, because we have that issue.
So can people hear me?
Yep.
Okay, fabulous.
We can also see you.
You can see me like this, yeah? And not like this, right? Okay. So as far as we're concerned, and we end and with a no end at the end of the book, it would neither be possible nor appropriate to summarize the lively collection of chapters that you've heard and seen about this morning, and which makes up this book. So we resisted the temptation of grasping the essence of each chapter, you know, in a kind of in a kind of coda or last word at the end of the book, either, you know, in isolation or evaluating the significance of each of the chapters for the different academic fields of inquiry from a kind of epistemic distance. The chapters can be viewed as already in relation to one another. They were written more or less simultaneously as authors were returning to the seminar, as you now know, at Monkey Valley, Norfolk, near Cape Town in 2017. Performing their first paper during the event, Karen Barad tells us that as a quantum entanglement, each moment is an infinite multiplicity. Each moment of returning is a sedimenting of the world in its iterative becoming and a thickening of the relationship between each chapter and between the authors. From an ethical point of view, this book is not a collection of chapters, but a, quote, strange topology where each is inside the other. Agential realism troubles the ontology of texts as independently existing bodies with precise edges and boundaries separated from their context or other text. Of course, as editors, we are not outside the chapters either, but also already implicated. Disrupting the unilinearity and chronology of the use of numbers in writing, we asked as editors the authors to give their chapters a color as an articulation of affect. Now we would like now to finish by tracing some of the entanglements through these colors where the superposition or interference pattern is not about mixing colors, but about diffracting them through one another. The wavelengths created by each chapter's diffraction graters can either be amplified or neutralized by the amplitude. They can be in or out of phase with each other as waveforms, depending on the combinations of their crests and the particular epical-onto epistemology the reader brings to the chapters.
The chapter colors work as a storm of bioluminescent selfs, which you can see on the screen, which are transparent, elongated pelagic tunicates or sea squirts found in warm seas, which pump water through their bodies, exuding flashes of light and swimming in rhythmic gelatinous, colorful pulses through each other, bending and curving light waves, creating new prisms of rainbow colors, depending on how they are touched and from what position they are viewed. The colored chapters, like selps, were fast growing, as I'm sure those of you in this room and outside it can attest to, with the authors facing tight deadlines for iterative processes of working, reworking, and returning their chapters, following the reviewers and editors' comments. Selps grow to maturity in 48 hours, and I think some of you were put under that 48 hours maturity. The glows from teal and ultramarine created by Joanne Pierce and Adrian van Eden-Wharton's chapters pertaining to the hauntologies of oceanic bodies of water, and the red, Roseanne Reynolds, red-black, Walter, Roseanne, and Karen, and red ochre, Teresa Giosa, allow the reader to sense the flashed-up political past of South African colonialism and apartheid in the thick now of the present and future. Iridescence, Nikki Romano, red-brown, Sadiq Matala and Veronica Mitchell, and orange, Kai Ma and Patrick Rivers, who we didn't hear from this morning, unfortunately, allow us to reconfigure disciplinary boundaries and practices in ways that move away from those steeped in mechanized and colonial thinking. Nuances of red move through the author's chapters: red-brown, red-black, red ochre, red-orange, and even though these colors were not decided upon in consultation with the other authors, in the same way that bodies of selps are useful because they carry carbon to the sea floor and are food for several species of fish, the conversations that the chapters in this volume initiate within and beyond Karen Barad's seminar serve to breathe life and nourishment into politico-ethico onto-epistemologies that are always already existing in diffractions through the global South and North. And we're very proud of the fact that this book was actually produced in the global South, and it is a conversation with Karen Barad's work in the global North. So thanks to you all for attending today, both online and here in the flesh. It's very nice to see all of the authors and to hear your presentations, very inspirational.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you people online for attending, and we would invite you also to come to our lunch in spirit. But the people here in the room, lunch should be ready? Yes. Okay, thank you and see you again.